Well, for reaction to the Prime Minister's speech, I'm joined by Professor Eyal Winter, an economist at Lancaster University, who's part of a team of behavioural experts who've been advising the UK government on how to ease lockdown restrictions. Professor, the new slogan from Boris Johnson is "Stay alert." Is that what you would want?
I would say stay alert is good, but I would say something more firm. I would stay at home unless you are sure you can follow the rules.
Right.
It's alert won't suffice. I mean, we have to make sure that people follow the rules and that the rules are mandatory. There are no guidelines, no nudges, but things that people have to obey. I'll tell you, there are two things that I think very much in line with what I suggested goes to the British government and the Israeli government. The first aspect that I think is very good in Johnson's announcement, which is exactly what I suggested, is that the announcement has to be in terms of a procedure, in terms of a schedule, not just what we are doing tomorrow, what we are doing next week, the week after, next month, and so forth. It has to be precise and clear, because each of us has his or her own exit strategy, and we have to prepare for our own exit strategy.
Right.
Sorry?
I just want to jump in. You wrote in an article, you made the comparison to traffic laws, saying that they are enforced with penalties, and they need to be like that for everyone to obey those laws. And you said the same should apply to pandemic rules. But the difference, surely, is that if I'm driving, I understand if I break a red light at speed, I could kill people, and I shouldn't. It's not as clear-cut as how we behave in a pandemic, exactly what we should do.
Let me give you an example of something that should be clear-cut. Face masks. Face masks is absolutely necessary. There was a Royal Society study invited by the government that says unambiguously, face masks save life, They have to be mandatory. People say, I hear people say nonsense about human rights. But we don't have to go through the International Human Rights Tribunal in
Professor, nobody's asking to go through a tribunal on this. There is divided medical opinion on this, and there is actually one doctor who I hope we will be speaking to later who suggests that for the public not to use face masks properly would actually be more dangerous than not to use them at all. So there is divided opinion on that. I'd just like to ask you, we'll carry on this. I'd like to ask you, Professor, how would you enforce the pandemic rules?
Well, first of all, it's important to understand that by making rules mandatory, you are already making, you are almost there with just making it mandatory. Very often, you don't need perfect enforcement for people to abide by the rules. It's enough that they understand that it's mandatory. The shame and the social pressure that come into force very often is enough to make people abide by these rules when they are mandatory, not when they are voluntary. When they are voluntary, they'll always find reason not to obey them.
But very briefly, it's very easy to enforce traffic because cars have license plates. People walking in parks, it's very difficult to enforce that unless there are enough police.
That's right. So police there need to be more police on the street. Much of the regulation has to be made by or fulfilled by the businesses themselves. We haven't heard anything about what the businesses and the working place have to make sure in order to accept their workers.
Professor, we will do that. We are actually going to be speaking to unions in subsequent sections of our programme. I hope you're still able to tune in. Professor Eyal Winter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.